Greetings and welcome to another edition of Top 10 Worst of Lists, your friendly one-stop shop for worst of lists since April of 2026. It's new and improved. Is it too early for me to have a new and improved Top 10 Worst of Lists? Welcome to the new and improved version of Top 10 Worst of Lists. I'm your host for this endeavor, Sam as it ever was, and today's Top 10 Worst of List is going to be, I think, a benchmark for all of us. Now, a lot of these Top 10 Worst of Lists can be, modified into being something like totally hysterical, hilarious, and a wild ride to, under the spoonful of syrup helps the codeine go down. Philosophy of life. Making our medicine, and in this case, medicine means not being a brainless zombie, victim of and servant of the agenda of the ruling elite. A hapless moron walking around thinking that they're all that, but they're none of that. They think they're all that in a bag of chips, and then they aren't even a bag of chips. In a bag of chips, these days actually is pretty expensive. Like some of the bags of chips are like $6-7, and they're 90% air. And you get them home, and you got 4 chips. You get the big bag, the family share bag, and you're like, oh my god, I spent $8 on chips. Wow, what an indulgence! And you're thinking I'm gonna have to take out a loan, run up my credit card balance just to get these freaking chips. And you get them home, and you open the bag, and it's like 4 chips. It's all, and it's not air. It's not even full air. Like you get a nice breath of fresh, literally. Not metaphorically, you literally get a nice breath of fresh air by just breathing in the air that they put in the chip bag to make the chips more resilient and stuff like that. It's nitrogen. Now nitrogen is part of air, like our environment. I think it's the most plentiful of the gaseous elements within our breathable air. But who wants to pay $8 a bag for 4 chips and a bunch of nitrogen? Apparently the nitrogen keeps it, doesn't spoil as much fast. Speaking of which, what happened with bread? Did I miss the memo or something like that? Because bread back in my day, which is admittedly something along the lines of 1,000 years ago, yes, I do remember the invention of fire and the wheel. I've heard them all. Shut up, why don't you? But you got bread used to start going moldy, maybe sometimes even 2 or 3 days. And you'd be like, oh, damn, there's mold in the back. You'll have to cut around that. There's mold in the back. It's always either in the front or the back of the bag. So you can either you got to toss it or you can roll the dice. But you never see moldy bread anymore. I mean, usually it would be less than a week, though, that you'd see the mold. By a week, and you'd be like, oh, Jesus Christ. I need to get my tetanus shot booster. Ooh, I inadvertently advocated a vaccine. Tetanus. Get rid of the tetanus shot. Bring back lockjaw. I bet you all wish I had lockjaw. You goddamn spoiled, rotten ingrates. So, anyway, bread doesn't spoil anymore. I mean, you can have bread. I've had bread sitting on the kitchen counter for weeks and stuff. And still you go back to it. And since I've seen The Worst of Bread, which I also own the album, these odds I've seen a lot. I should do Top 10 Worst of Bread and have it be... Oh, actually, they do have a list I'm slowly building of worst breads. Which I've only got, sourdoughs on there, and it's one other one. My favorite bread is marbled rye. Where am I? So bread is like, like you go back 3 weeks, the bread on the counter, it's like yummy. I prefer it. My favorite meal, not that anybody gives a rat's ass, I even don't give a rat's ass anymore, but my favorite all-time meal is meatball sub on white, okay, with all the trimmings and whatnots. The only difference being is it has to sit on the counter overnight. You have to leave it out and you'll be like, okay, well, you get home with the meatball sub, it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you're like, Jesus Christ, where am I? What am I doing? And you're like, you've got good intentions and you're like futzing around for a plate and you're like, I'll just sit down for just 5 minutes, get back to this to your sandwich. And then next time you're cognizant and aware, it's like 11:30. You're late for work. You don't even know where you're at. And then, but as long as you're late for work, you might as well make it a half day. And so you're like, well, what's for lunch? And then you see, oh yeah, that meatball sub, and you see it sitting there on the counter, talking to you, going like, come here, big boy. Why don't you wrap your mouth around me and chug meat? And you're like, I'm down. And it's like the best sandwich ever. I mean, except for maybe fried salami on white with peanut butter and lettuce. But how did I wish I could had somebody to take notes with it. People remind me of how I got on these tangents because I'm losing myself more and more in the tangent. What was the list for today? Did I announce list? Top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine. Well, this is going to be a sullen exercise. These aren't like some of the, terrifically hilarious top 10 worst. Like top 10 worst times to fake a prostate orgasm, or top 10, times to get top 10 worst times to get teabagged by your psychiatrist. This is going to be this one. I mean, because there aren't. We're talking about worst places to visit in a time machine. If I'm going to stay true to the integrity of top 10 worst of lists, I have to stay true to the topic. Unless being unfaithful to the topic is the gimmick within the topic that I intended in the first place, which in this particular case is not the case. The case being the case. Staying true to the topic, worst places to visit in a time machine means bad times in history. Evil, sad times. But look, I mean, we have in our culture a rather difficult image that's been etched into our brains with phenomenal depth and resonance. And it's just, incredibly horrific what they've done to us. Think of time machine. Quick, think of a time machine. Of course, Back to the Future, the DeLorean time machine. That's what everybody thinks of when they think of time machine. Now, what did they do? They had a time machine, right? So they're able to go back in time. They're able to do the forward to the future, all kinds of different things that they could do within the context of having that time machine. What do they decide to do? They go back, 20 years or whatever it is to make sure that the kid doesn't have sex with his own mother or something. I mean, talk about dumbing down expectations and dulling down, forcing people into very limited perspectives. And they show you the 50s. Everything's wonderful in the 50s. Everything is beautiful. It's the happy days of yore, right? And there's no people of color or sexual orientations other than heterosexuality. And, there's no everything bad about anybody. It's beautiful white picket fences and white picket lives and white picket attitudes. It's just rancid. Absolute zero creativity. They don't go, let's say, stop the Kennedy assassination. They don't go to kill Hitler. They don't go to kill Stalin. They don't go to stop the Ten Commandments from being delivered to Moses, that would make a great Back to the Future. Right? Oh, Scotty, it's time to go back to 4000 BC where you can stop God from giving the Ten Commandments to Moses before he ruins the future, Scotty, or whatever the kid's name is. That would be a movie worth watching. Because that'd be like opening up your imagination of crazy, absolutely as crazy as anything creative could get. If having Back to the Future with that same setup, the same Robert Zemeckis, all the same guys, and you know, having them do something like that. I mean, people be like, "What the hell did I just see?" Instead, they're like, "Oh, very good. Give me some more pablum and innocuous drivel. I need the drivel. I need the drivel." I'll give you some drivel. I'll give you top 10 worst of drivel. So, I mean, like, we've had this image of time machines ingrained into our culture that is so underwhelming. I mean, the only other time machine in history, well, you know, I think there's a couple, but the only other major league time machine in history is Time Machine by Lord H.G. Wells and Aldous Huxley. And, I mean, so they goes back in time and they're front in time forwards, and they got the world is turned into just like, you know, the Morlocks and the Eloi. And the Eloi are just sort of brainless, you know, like in modern day Americans. And the Morlocks are, you know, monstrous, like modern day Americans. And they, you know, the Morlocks that come up to the surface, they eat the Elois and stuff like that and whatnot, harvesting some fresh Eloi. Honey, I've got a split for the surface. I'll be back in about 3-4 hours. Gonna get some fresh Eloi. Honey, don't forget the milk. You know, so you got that. And what's that? H.G. Wells, so he's writing like, I don't know, in the 1800s or some odd stuff like that. So he didn't have a lot of, you know, things that he could have gone back in time, though, and stopped the Declaration of Independence from being ratified. So that the con artists that we refer to as the founding fathers wouldn't have been able to trick everybody into fighting in the Continental Army under the premise that they were going to create a society where all men were seen as equals. And then 10 years later, those same guys wrote a constitution to codify supposedly the aspirations and strictures within the country as a whole. And they start saying like, oh, well, you didn't really believe us when you said we're going to create all men equal. We're going to treat all men equal? Are you kidding? It's like Paul Lynde was on one of the founding fathers. Some man. You know, you don't have anything like that going on that says like, you know, like, oh, yeah, we're going to follow through on that thing. And the very top of the Declaration of Independence, they said that, you know, we're going to treat all men equally. They didn't get that. It was a lie. It was a army recruitment flyer. So you can go back and stop that, or stop the freaking Constitution, or stop the Articles of Confederation, which created such a sloppy government that all the people were so desperate for some law and order that they let them get away with having this lousy Constitution that wound up indoctrinating and installing a permanent overclass. I mean, you know, it's just there's no representation of the people whatsoever. In fact, it's just monarchy by committee. Why don't they have a time machine going back to take care of that bizwax? You know, I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. But those would be on a list of top 10 best places to visit in a time machine, right? Where you could actually do some work. And why is it that they don't have movies like that? You know, why is it that every time a time machine is involved in the situation, people don't go back and fix stuff or do anything that runs counter to the long-term goals of the aristocracy? Of course not. The aristocracy owns the goddamn media, every single bit of it. So even the, you know, indie people who might want to try to put together a low budget film. First of all, people are so used to the glossiness of our modern day cultural apparatuses that they can't watch the lowbrow, what do they call it? Wee budget? No, tiny little budget, independent, micro budget. They can't watch it for more than 5 seconds. Try watching cable access or whatever it is, and people grow tired of it. It's too hard to take after 5 minutes. People are so used to being force-fed 4K versions of stuff with their buffed out to the nth degree, spending $500 million on a freaking movie. Are you freaking kidding me? With all the needs of the world, and we think that we deserve a $500 million movie? Are you serious? Have you seen all the 23,000 people in the world starving every day to death? Starvation-related deaths? And you're going to see a $500 million movie before promotion costs? Not worth it. And the movies that they're spending all this bread on is they're getting us to pay for, the weaponization of CGI primarily. Up yours, baby. So before we get to it, number one, I want to say that I'm going to spew a lot of theories, maybe a lot of what most people would call conspiracy theories, but that's wrong. That's also a lie designed to try to demotivate people who might want to think independently. God forbid, heaven forfend. No, I've renamed those reality checks because basically the people who believe the stuff that's coming out of the mouths of our leaders and all of our media sources, mainstream and alt media, people who believe that they're the ones who are the nut jobs. The reality, so I'm renaming conspiracy theories as reality checks because we need some sort of way of being able to pump the brakes on these rotten bastards. Or just, sit around and wait for the knock on the door that says it's your turn for the cattle car. Come on, you're taking you to the fat rendering plant to make candles out of your ginormous fatty deposits. So, I might not be right on all this stuff, but I'm usually pretty darn close. But I would recommend that you fact check anything that you feel is brought up that you don't trust or feel, insulted by or try to refute in your mind. You got to do your own fact checking now. It's not everything on everything. Everything that you can see is getting through the gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers are malevolent purveyors of the malefactors who are in charge of the whole beeswax and stuff like that. It's just, ignore it, its impact on it, and they will run over you, run roughshod, and they'll get you on being detached and apathetic. If you take it at face value, they'll get you because it's not just lies, but it's also omitting the big picture so that we don't have an opportunity to grasp the unknown unknowns. We don't know what's going on out there, and if our informational systems are refusing to cover it, we think everything is fine. That the natural tendency is to think that they're not reporting something, they're reporting all these other tragedies and stuff like that. It must be the rest of the world must be fine. And that's that's how they get away with it's sort of a different type of lie. It's lie by intentionally omitting various elements of the truth that did not help them achieve their goals. And their goals are, sort of like the elimination and destruction of our humanity. So what are you doing? Nothing. I'm not doing nothing. But the fact is that you've got to be more active than that, or just, phone it in, forget about it. But don't complain about it, and don't foist your hate and your ignorance on everybody else. Just push off to the side, and go to the your Cubs games and your dumbass movies, and just pretend that the whole world is fine until you shuffle off the mortal coil. And I'm not a partisan hack. I'm not out to influence you to be one thing or another. I don't care what you are. I care who you are. And that's how we should all be. Anytime we sort of paint each other with broad brushstrokes, it's the gateway to bigotry. Do unto others as I'm doing to you. Period. That's it. If you can live by that, everything else will fall into place. It's like counting your pennies and watch the dollars grow, or whatever that colloquialism is. Watch your pennies, whatever it is. It's the same thing. If you treat everybody kind, like you would want to be treated, all the other bigger problems are going to work itself out. Don't let all these other prejudicial things that they foist on us. When a baby is born, they're not prejudiced. When a baby is born, they don't have hatred in their hearts. They're just an empty slate that we fill up with a bunch of garbage that turns people into, apparently, it's turning everybody into a bunch of hateful monsters. And people aren't doing anything about it. It's like, oh, well, let's ride out the hateful monster thing and see where it goes, where it takes us. So, and finally, before we get on with the list, the meat and potatoes of the subject, it's time for a little bit of commercial sponsors. And it's the new delicatessen in your town. It's for a delicious sandwich and or baked goods. It's Crosby, Stills, and Nosh from the makers of Pantera Bread. Comes Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Come on down and buy yourself lunch specials. Include tiny bubbles in the wine. It's Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And then from the people who brought you Six Flags Over America, now comes False Flags Over America. Coming soon, it's White Flags Over Vietnam. But False Flags of America, where a bunch of different co-opted fifth column operatives will gather together at a theme park, and you walk around and they'll, make you think that you're having a great time by pulling all kinds of sneaky shiznaz right out from under your nose. It's False Flags Over America. And Feeble Man, coming soon to the Phlox Network. It's Friday nights at 9 a.m. An Earthling goes to the planet Krypton, where the large planet and red sun make them super feeble. It takes them all day to brush their teeth. It's Feeble Man. And then a delicious new breakfast taste treat from the makers of Cheerios. It's Fellatios. Take off on either Cheerios or SpaghettiOs. I'm not even sure which version I want to do. From the makers of SpaghettiOs, it's Fellatios. A delicious spaghetti treat makes the table for one. Hi, I'll be dead like a table for one. That's right. It's Fellatios. Time for another Fellatios. Fellatios and meatballs. Fellatios and Franks. Fellatios. Cocktail weenies. It's Fellatios. Chef Boyardee. And finally, the sequel to Ferris Bueller's Day Off is here with the movie Ferris Bueller's Days In, where Ferris, using his guise as Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago, buys a controlling interest in a rural Iowa Days Inn franchise hotel located kitty corner to the giant Iowa 80 truck stop. Join in on the daily twist and shout sing-alongs in the attached Maxie's Sports Lounge. Chillax in our lovely hot tub that seats 2.5 comfortably, or stroll through the lovely lobby that features numerous paintings of forgettable duck ponds done in pointillism. Because remember, that life moves pretty fast, so the checkout time is at 11 a.m. And if you don't stop to look around once in a while, you could miss it. You could miss your checkout time. From the producers of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, now comes Ferris Bueller's Days In Hotel. Visit the fancy restaurant and Wrigley Field bleachers. Remember the bleachers they used to have outside of the rooftop? You watched the game from a rooftop across the way from the Wrigley Field when it was the friendly confines. It's not so friendly confines nowadays. And that's an understatement. All right, so that's it for the underwriters of this today's list. Top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine. All right, so first on number 10 of the top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine, the day Buddy Holly died. God damn it. My freaking... Oh, yeah. Hang on, one sec. The day Buddy Holly... Wait. Damn it, stupid He says, no wonder everything's going to... Jesus. Where's my production staff? I do have... People think that, just a little behind-the-scenes glimpse of what goes on to make Top 10 11 list tick. I do have a staff of 14 production associates and such, but they are sentenced basically on court-mandated community service, and they got a sweetheart deal where every 10 minutes they get a 15-minute break. All right, let's try this one again. Top 10, where's number... worst place it is in a time machine? Number 10, the day Buddy Holly died. What a sad time in the world, like this is people were really turned on to, people still haven't turned on to it, 70 years ago. And people still haven't turned on to the idea that it's part of a purge, the Ameripurge of all the progressive minded lefties in our culture. Excuse me. As, sort of personified in the McCarthyism era and stuff like that, but it was so far beyond McCarthyism. And I mean, thinking about it like this, the guy, the Walter Mondale, what's that guy's name? The E. Howard Hunt, the newsman that everybody respected, Edward Murrow. So Edward R. Murrow is, helping famously take down McCarthyism, played a part in it. But they never talk about the fact that, like, 3 hours later, he had his sponsor pulled from his series where he did the takedown of McCarthyism. And back in those days, like, he really kind of pretty much had one sponsor as the main sponsor that underwrote the cost of the show. It was Alcoa, who's a major league defense contractor. And they pulled their sponsorship and he lost the show. And then his career was over. You don't see George Clooney doing any plays about how the system shot back at Murrow after the McCarthyism thing, how they destroyed him. And he was dead within like a short amount of time. I don't remember exactly. But you could look that up if you want to and post it in the comments. It would be a real help. But will you? No. Will you even watch this? Unlikely. Are you hearing the sound of can you hear the sound of my voice? So that's that for that. But I'm telling you, the fact of the matter is that this stuff just went underground. God damn it, piece of garbage, stupid, flaky. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So anyway, there's this stuff where you got, like, Buddy Holly is like, reminds me of, the extent of the purge is so unrecognized. Just think about any progressive leftward-leaning person in culture that had a mainstream level of visibility, and think about what happened to them. Premature weirdness that cut their careers, or in many cases their lives, way short. And it only happened to leftward-leaning progressives. And so it's like, it's deeply suspicious, but it goes so beyond anything. Usually at this point I would be reading my list of that I keep of leftward-leaning progressives who had their lives ruined or died as to try to establish the factual side of that America had a purge. And you think about all other fascist societies in history have had purges of their intellectuals, and you think nothing of it. You're like, oh, yeah, sure, Cultural Revolution? Of course, no problem. Yeah, I believe that. But you won't believe it for America, but it's true. If you just look at any one of them, any honest progressives, don't give me any of these, like, half-wit, sellout, fifth-column operative jagoffs and stuff like that. But what was really tragic is like, and I'm going to trust you to do the homework on that one. But here's a sort of historical fact of relevance in this issue that I think proves beyond a shadow of doubt that is not just about, willingness, ability, and ruthlessness to destroy people's lives, just willy-nilly, but also that they will destroy the culture itself, and just a hatefulness of humanity and our ability to be able to be expressive and unique individuals. And that's Universal's destruction of the music masters of hundreds and hundreds of artists, perhaps as much as, who really knows, but it could be like as much as a third of all music masters were destroyed in a fire when Universal recklessly stored a bunch of masters in an under-equipped, unsafe warehouse that burned to the ground and took perhaps as many, thousands of music masters from some of the biggest artists of all time. And it happened in June, I think it was June 1st of 2008. The New York Times reported that the damages were far worse than initially reported, that the masters contain numerous unreleased outtakes that are gone forever, along with irreplaceable album notes, numerous movies and TV series, acetates from which the related music copies are made, and 40 to 50,000 archived digital video and film copies from Universal movies and TV shows, and almost a century old, including the NBC series Law and Order, The Office, Miami Vice, perhaps worst of all, I Love Lucy, destroyed in this fire. Now, how could you possibly, if you cared about anything, because you're going to make money off of the stuff forever, by re-releasing it, coming up with new edits and stuff like that off of the digital masters. You can call it digital masters. It has a carte blanche to it. It helps propel sales. How do you not protect these treasures? You're making tons of millions upon millions, billions of dollars off of them, forever and stuff. But I don't know, man. It's like, how do you, if that doesn't happen unless you want it to happen. And that's what my assertion is right here, right now. And when you're browsing through the annotated list of affected artists below, and this is a list I put together, and I just breezed through the list, is a mile long, of people whose masters were destroyed, and orchestras and all kinds of jazz people and stuff, that I didn't take the time out to put a full list together because I've never been able to read it in a million years. But you've got everybody from Tupac to the Weavers, who were actually blacklisted in the McCarthyism days, to Phil Oakes and recorded speeches of Martin Luther King. A large percentage of artists who were black, whose music was destroyed, is blatantly high. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, Ella Fitzgerald, Chuck Berry, Ray Charles, B.B. King, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and so many others that one could almost see this almost as like a primarily attack against pioneering black musicians. But anyway, here's a list of the most recognizable artists for whom they have thus far admitted that masters were destroyed. 50 Cent, Aerosmith, Steve Allen, the Andrews Sisters, Joan Armatrading, Louis Armstrong, Burt Bacharach, Joan Baez, Count Basie, Beck, Captain Beefheart, George Benson, Elmer Bernstein, Chuck Berry, Art Blakey, Boston, Brothers Johnson, Clarence Gatemouth Brown, Dave Brubeck, Jimmy Buffett, T-Bone Burnett, the Carpenters, Ray Charles, Eric Clapton, Roy Clark, Patsy Cline, Wayne Cochran, Joe Cocker, Ornette Coleman, John Coltrane, Bing Crosby, Sheryl Crow, Sammy Davis Jr., Neil Diamond, Bo Diddley, Willie Dixon, Fats Domino, Tommy Dorsey, Lamont Dozier, Eagles, Steve Earle. Well, the Eagles, actually, that could be a blessing. Steve Earle, Duke Ellington, Eminem, Eric B. and Rakim, The Fifth Dimension, Ella Fitzgerald, Four Tops, Peter Frampton, Aretha Franklin, Judy Garland, Dizzy Gillespie, Benny Goodman, Grand Funk Railroad, Al Green, Guns N' Roses, Buddy Guy, Charlie Hayden, Merle Haggard, Bill Haley and the Comets, Jan Hammer, Lionel Hampton, Coleman Hawkins, Richie Havens, Woody Herman, Billie Holiday, Buddy Holly, John Lee Hooker, Big Walter Horton, Howlin' Wolf, Humble Pie, Janet Jackson, Ahmad Jamal, Etta James, Elton John, Quincy Jones, Louis Jordan, The Jordanaires, Kansas, B.B. King, Martin Luther King Jr., Lambert, Hendricks and Ross, Jerry Lee Lewis, Ramsey Lewis, Love, Leonard Skinner, Moms Mabley, The Mamas and the Papas, Groucho Marx, John Mayall, Van McCoy, Reba McEntire. Again, is it a blessing? Sorry. Gary McFarland, Barry McGuire, Meatloaf, John Mellencamp, Sergio Mendez, Ethel Merman, Roger Miller, Mills Brothers, Charlie Mingus, Joni Mitchell, Wesca Montgomery, Ennio Morricone, Jerry Mulligan, the Neville Brothers, Nine Inch Nails, Nirvana, Ken Nordine, Phil Oakes, Oingo Boingo, Junior Parker, Dolly Parton, Les Paul, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, The Police, Iggy Pop, Billy Preston, Louis Prima, Primus, REM, Buddy Rich, Sonny Rollins, Rufus, Otis Rush, Leon Russell, Tupac Shakur, Snoop Dogg, Sonic Youth, Soundgarden, Spinal Tap, Squeeze, Steely Dan, Steppenwolf, Cat Stevens, Sting, George Strait, Styx, Supertramp, Coco Taylor, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Big Mama Thornton, Three Dog Night, Joe Walsh, Wang Chung, War, Muddy Waters, Johnny Guitar Watson, The Weavers, Weezer, Barry White, The Who, Sonny Boy Williamson, and Neil Young. Neil Young, about half and half. Half busing, half, this type of stuff. Remember, I did this list in a big, huge hurry, so these are just the names that jumped out on me when I was going through the massive master list of all the ones that they got, and it's just like, but maybe we can, there could be a saving grace in all this. Maybe we can get, the people who re-recorded all of Taylor Swift's albums that were stolen out from under by Scooter Libby or whatever that guy's name, Scooter McFarlane, I don't remember, Scooter somebody, and just reproduce all these albums, because apparently it's so goddamn easy that Taylor Swift was able to reproduce 4 of her albums without any breaking a sweat. It's a real goddamn shame that those, same type of thing where they blamed, what was it, ISIS for destroying all those antiquities in Syria. Why would they do that? Why would they take the time to bother to destroy those antiquities? It doesn't make a lick of sense. Are they a proxy for the global military-industrial complex and just destroying works of art at this point? Is that what's really behind slant drilling in national forests in Alaska, great wildlife refuges and stuff, where their intent isn't to just exploit the land or anything, they'll make a profit. They'll make a profit while they're doing it, sure, but the actual intention is to destroy everything cool. Number 8, the worst place to visit in a time machine, the day, God, how am I supposed to make this guy? The day they discovered cancer. That's not a good day to travel to in terms of time machines. All of a sudden you go into some laboratory and God knows where, and they're like, these cells are indestructible, and they're multiplying like rabbits and things. Something. I don't know. I can't make that anything funny. I can't do it. Maybe I can throw a commercial sponsor. Line item number 9, worst places to visit a time machine, is a part sponsored by new from the U.S. Post Office, now branching off into body art. From the people who brought you the Forever stamp, now comes the Forever Tramp stamp. I'm not exactly sure. It's a funny idea, but I don't know where to go with it in terms of the direction of the scripting or anything like that. How does it tie in with the Forever stamp? Because we don't have to, it's always worth it to deliver 1 ounce first class letter in the U.S. mail, and you pay, if it's $1 or whatever it is cost now, that it will always be valid, even if the price for a delivery of a 1 ounce first class letter goes to $100. You can still use the Forever. How does it try the Forever Tramp stamp? I don't know. Maybe if you got some ideas, put them in the comment section. Maybe you too could be a writer for the top 10 worst of lists. I'm actually thinking about having guest hosts so that I can get out from underneath the yoke of oppression that the daily editions of top 10 worst lists is turning my life onto. All right, so anyway, they get that. So maybe it's not quite as so depressing. Number 8, the top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine. The day Eisenhower was elected president. Now, I think all the troubles of our world started with Eisenhower when he got elected president. Just as a sort of caveat to people going forward, never elect the head of your military to be the head of your civilian government, because the minute Eisenhower got into office, it was like all this crackdowns and stuff like that. All this anti-left-wing oppressive purges started happening. You had McCarthyism and House Un-American Activities Committee and blacklists and payola, and then every leftward-leaning progressive lost their gigs. and had their lives ruined, and a lot of them turned up dead. Elvis gets drafted, and he's never the same after. They sterilize him by showing pictures of him with his famous hairdo all shaved off and stuff. I mean, they destroyed all the promise of the United States finally living up to the sort of potential of the great American experiment of finding a place where all men can live as equal and only be judged by who they are rather than what they are, and ruined it forever. Now it's like overtly, it's been closet fascist government for literally for days. Now it's but for decades, and it's been overwhelmingly obvious that they're rolling out they're pulling back the curtain to show their true faces, finally. And so the day Eisenhower was elected president was the day that the Republic ended, or any sort of vestiges of the Republic ended. It never really was quite as glorious as everybody kind of falsely remembers it to be. I defy anybody wearing a MAGA hat or following the MAGA ways of telling me when the again period is and make America great again. Where is the compass pointing towards on that again time period? That would be a horrible place to visit in a time machine, I would gather. Number 7, the day they killed off the original Bob Dylan and replaced him with an evil body double designed to help destroy the counterculture from within. I mean, hey, a lot of people made a lot of hay about the Paul McCartney's dead thing that came shortly after that, which was clearly an operation, let me see if I get my operation straight, Operation Mockingbird story that was artificially planted and distributed all throughout the world so that everybody not only knew that there was a rumor that Paul was dead, but knew like 20 different things easily, supposed clues that pointed to your support of the idea that Paul McCartney actually was dead and replaced by a body double. But the fact is that was all a cover-up to draw attention away from the fact that Bob Dylan was the one who was actually killed off and replaced by a body double. Paul McCartney looked, sung, wrote music, all the same as exactly he had always been doing. Nothing more than a sort of progression, maturity, and eventually kind of like giving into his more vanilla instincts following the breakup of the Beatles. But always the same Paul McCartney in looks, sound, and creative abilities. But Bob Dylan, after 1966, the supposed motorcycle accident, he comes back. He's wearing a beard and a mustache. Creepy. Also, what's up with that? And then he'd been doing movies every year with Pennebaker, and those stopped. And the next time he appeared for like a tour or something like that is Rolling Thunder, and he's wearing thick white makeup the entire time. And they made a movie, but he's caked with this makeup the whole time. He's got the beard and the mustache. What are they hiding? They're hiding something. And his voice doesn't sound the same. His songs don't sound the same. Eventually, there was probably a buzz going on. Like, is this the real Bob Dylan? He's doing like Nashville Skyline and self-portraits. Boatloads of crap, each one of them. And sound nothing like the original Bob Dylan, whose work was transcendent. His poetry, his lyrics, and his relentless creative spirit were gone, completely gone. And so probably there was a lot of like organic whispers and dark corners and stuff like that. Like, that can't be the real Bob. That's not the real Bob. Doesn't even look like the original Bob Dylan. Not at all. So, I mean, that's when they came up with the Paul McCartney thing, just to sort of like put the kibosh on all the rumors about Bob Dylan. Nobody was talking about Bob Dylan anymore. It'd be like, even if you brought it up, Paul McCartney is dead. Did you hear? I was like, no, it's Bob Dylan. The one because the Paul McCartney thing is just a lie about it. People are looking at you like going like, what kind of crazy nut job are you? Paul McCartney's dead. God damn it! Wake up. Number 6 of the top 10 worst places to visit in time machine. The day they wrote the Declaration of Independence and used it to trick the colonists into fighting for the American robber barons. Look. All we got at the end of the American Revolution was monarchy by committee. You still had only white wealthy landlords were allowed to vote. You had the Senate that had two representatives from each state, no matter how populous the state was. So you extrapolate that 200 years later, whatever. And you've got the state of Wyoming's got 400,000 people, and you got California at 40 million people, and they have the same amount of representation in the Senate. What the hell is that? That's not a Republican form of government. That's not a representational form of government. That is the aristocracy keeping a lid on things so that populism would never really take root. Because if you had populism and stuff like that, I mean, popular opinion would be able to, decide who's, got the reins of government, and that would not do. So the smaller states actually, wound up being the more conservative states. They might have seen that. They might have projected that back in the days of the Constitutional Convention. They were sure coming up with a lot of nastiness. So the same people who wrote "All men are created equal," I think, are 10 years later saying, "Oh, not all men." All right, so that would be a bummer to visit, but you can maybe sneak in and to get a different take on the Great Compromise. I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, that'd be pretty boring and sad time. Number 5, top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine. The day we learned of LBJ's portrayal when he announced in March 1968 that he was pulling out of the presidential race. Now think about it. We saw that pretty much verbatim when Joe Biden fell asleep at the nationally televised presidential debate in 2024. And they forced him out. But, I mean, like, the turnaround time was only a little bit different from LBJ. March of 1968 is when he pulled out. So here's Nixon's been campaigning forever and virtually unopposed. Mitt Romney's father, I forget what his name is the guy who was his main competitor. And he imploded, his campaign imploded. So really Nixon had, sort of a free run to campaign forever. And then LBJ says, I'm pulling out in March of the year of a presidential election. It just doesn't, it's messed up. And I believe that's the beginning of having a Democratic Party that's no longer independent and autonomous, that it's really just the other side of the coin of the Republican Party acting as, Judas and betraying their constituents significantly to just act when they're in power to, just have a kinder, gentler Republican. And Republicans are devoted, whether they like it or not, they're devoted to the business class and the billionaires and all that stuff and the ultra conservatives. And that's their druthers. I mean, if they want to be ruled by, a wannabe Hitler type of manic, destructive maniac, just call it quits and leave the Union, man. The jury is still out as to whether or not Lincoln was right for keeping the South in the Union. Just let it, sometimes you got to let go, let God, Lincoln. And I'd say that with full confidence that the guy's, historical record is not that great. I mean, if you really take a close look at it, he only freed the slaves for political expediency when George McClellan was winning the presidential race of 1864. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's pull out all the stops here. Let's free the slaves. And that's when it took place. Sorry to say, the Civil War was about preserving the Union. And I think now more than ever, people are starting to see that might have been a mistake. That, that maybe the country should have divided into free and slave states and just let time take its. I know it sounds heartless and callous because ultimately it did turn into a war to eliminate slavery, which was a noble cause, but that is not why it was fought. Certainly on the part of the Lincoln. The South, I think it probably was, but nastiness. Anywho, so LBJ, they should add one more initial to LBJ's name, and that would be F. So it's pronounced F LBJ, as far as I'm concerned. Number 4, the day they canceled Star Trek. Now, yeah, that'd be like one of the top 10 saddest days in history right there. You know, think about a Trekkie in their lives and things like that. All those episodes that could have been made with a vintage Captain Kirk without a huge abdominal flap to worry about or hairpiece. And all those episodes, I mean, they're doing, back in those days, they were doing like 75 episodes a season and stuff. They could have had, I mean, you know, just if Star Trek had lasted another 3-4 seasons, they could have had another 750 episodes. Number 3, the top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine. The day Rupert Murdoch bought out MySpace. Now, I know MySpace, and the mention of it immediately qualifies me for grandpa certification. But I got to say, somebody who used MySpace, it was a glorious time. You could actually get through to people without all the hateful screeds. And you could index people on where they lived. So if you're like a touring act or something like that, you want to be able to alert people in areas that you were touring into, that you were coming in there, or you're just vacationing if you're, you know, one of the normies and stuff like that, and you want to know, well, who lives in Little Rock, Arkansas and stuff, and you could search your friends based on state, zip code, all kinds of cool stuff. Interests, various different interests. You can index, like, you know, somebody who's into television production, who does their own TV shows, who does their own movies, independent movies, stuff like that. You could like click on all these different, you know, qualifiers and interests, and it would produce a list of people in your area that fall into the parameters of that search, until you could meet a whole bunch of people. Every time you like do that type of search, it was accurate, and you could reach out to those people and they respond like, "Oh wow, you're into TV. Let's collaborate on something." It was, awesome. And then Rupert Murdoch bought it and turned it into a big pile of dog turds within the first few hours. And it was so bad that it drove everybody to Facebook, and we didn't see what was coming. Nobody had any clue as to how bad Facebook would become, how much of a nightmare it would turn our lives into. And that guy being a billionaire, Jesus Christ, that snake, Zuckerberg, man, I wouldn't trust him to engineer my train set, let alone run something that's powerful, invasive, and destructive as, Instagram and Facebook. Jesus, and they're doing an AI too. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, number 2, the top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine. The day of your own death. So that might not be fun. Maybe if you get there early enough and it's something that you die of that's preventable, like a falling carcass off the top of the Empire State Building or something like that you could push yourself out of the way. Provided that doesn't violate the butterfly effect or any of the things that, if you come into contact with yourself, the both of you will explode. Immediately explode. Implode even. The both of you will collapse like the Twin Towers in a, what do they call a thing? Intentional implosion. I don't know, there's a term for it. I can't remember what it is. But anyway, number 1, the top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine. The day I wrote worst places to visit in a time machine. Woohoo! Top 10 worst places to visit in a time machine. Get it? See what I did there? You didn't see anything. Quit trying to act cool. We all know that there's nothing cool. There's nothing cool that has to do with anything that you are. All right, so anyway, that's all the time we got for Top 10 Worst of This. What an incredible time it's been for me, and I trust for others who have become fans of Top 10 Worst of Lists. Tuning in tomorrow for another edition of Top 10 Worst of Lists, if I live long enough to produce it. It's Top 10 Worst Times to Produce a Broadway musical tribute to Joseph Stalin. Well, don't forget, we've got a charity event coming up on one